Hello and welcome to Blue Triangle's product training. Thanks for joining us today. We have a very cool topic to cover today, and that is how to set up and deploy a CSP in Blue Triangle in 15 minutes or less. If you raised your eyebrows when you first read that, it's the correct response. For everyone who knows what a CSP is, you can agree it's quite the challenge to not only implement, but also maintain. That is, without the help of a tool that can automate the implementation and maintenance for you. If you don't know what a CSP is, don't worry. We'll be answering that question for you and address questions like, why do I need a CSP and what is the benefit of having one? My name is Mark. I'm the support manager at Blue Triangle here, and with me today, ready to dive into the topic, we have Gus Anderson, our VP of Digital Experience Strategy. Gus has worked extensively within our tag governance and CSP manager solutions, and I'm happy to have him today to share his expertise and wisdom on the topic of CSP implementation. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Gus.
Hey, thanks, Mark, and thanks everyone for joining us here today just to talk about CSPs, content security policies. We're going to go into this demo pretty quickly and be able to, with the goal here to be able to set up a CSP in 15 minutes or less with the help of Blue Triangle's portal here. So we start from the top here. Our goal is to do just that, implement an accurate and effective content security policy right here live on the demo. And part of that will be understanding all the domains that are being communicated on your site, create an effective whitelist of known good domains, ultimately build that content security policy, and then show you how to continuously monitor and tune that part. Perhaps that might be one of the most important pieces. So in terms of our agenda here today, just to cover some of the foundational background, we're just going to review the security vulnerabilities that we're ultimately trying to solve here. Like what is the problem? What are we trying to solve with the content security policy? We'll get some basis about what a content security policy is, define it, review Blue Triangle's phased approach, very similar to any sort of security implementation. You want to do this in steps and stages, and then ultimately show how to set up that whitelist and CSP live in the portal here today. So from a stand-up, go backwards a little bit and just talk about what are we trying to prevent here. So really, Blue Triangle's capabilities around CSP management was born from preventing form jacking and cross-site scripting, any kind of browser-based hijacking or ad injection, as well as what's been in the news quite a bit for the last few months, which is mage card attacks. So the Blue Triangle solution around the creation of content security policy is really about preventing those attack vectors and, more importantly, monitoring and alerting on those authorized domains in real time. Key aspect here. So if we start again from a basis of understanding, just the Wikipedia is talking about a content security policy. So you asked me, what exactly is a content security policy? So it's a computer security standard introduced to prevent cross-site scripting. It prevents clickjacking and code injection, and it really is about understanding trusted web page context. And it does that by providing a standard method for website owners to declare approved origins. That's really the key piece of this. And it does it for a variety of source types, images and fonts and JavaScripts as well. So it's actually installed in your code, a content security policy. A couple different methods to do that via meta tag or header. And it specifically lets that browser know which dynamic resources are allowed to load. Now, if you think about that, if we're actually going to ever be in a blocking mode, we've introduced some inherent risk here, right? Because a CSP is a positively defined list, a whitelist, if it's not explicitly added and the CSP is in a blocking mode, you'll end up breaking good first or third party content, good functionality, good analytics, their first party content as well as some third party content. If not specifically added, you take that risk. So there are some concerns about being able to build a CSP correctly. And that is actually a valid concern and something that everyone should be worried about. And that's what we're going to show you in terms of giving you the right context so you can build that effectively. And then being able to manage that CSP and the ongoing violations are another concern, but we're going to answer that throughout this demo here today. So I thought it made sense to just talk about and visualize the actual attack vector we're talking about here. So in a typical communication, you have on your left side here, the origins, any kind of enterprise-based security, as well as later on top of that, any cloud security. You've got your WAF, you've got some bot management going on, and those are feeding information that your browser is requesting back and forth. And then you've got tags, first party and third party, that you've deployed on your site that are also being accessed by the browser and communicating things back to domains. And then on top of that, and we'll cover this a little bit more in our tag governance discussions at later dates, but there's an item called piggyback tags. Whether you're aware or not aware, vendors that you've approved can deploy additional tags on top of that. And again, those are places that those domains can be communicated with. So all of those aspects, whether written in your first party code, situated at your origin, something that's on your third party tag or on a piggyback tag, actually allow the browser and tell the browser to go talk to these domains, hopefully that are good. But when you have an issue, if you have an issue in the source code where someone has hacked any kind of first party code, or someone has infiltrated one of your tag partners and allowed external domains to be communicated, or even worse yet, someone who not specifically authorized, but one of the vendors that you've allowed on your site is authorized, has an issue, then malicious domains are going to be talked to. Again, you think about the vector in which these get initiated. The browser is requesting these things, but the tag or the piggyback tag domain that's been specified, if it's a malicious one, never goes back through your enterprise security or your cloud security. So it goes directly. But what we're going to do is show how a content security policy actually blocks those domains that are malicious or unknown and still allows the good domains to filter through and provide all that functionality you've been used to. We said from the beginning here, Mark, that we were going to go through this in a phased approach. And being in the security field for many, many years, you always want to take a very deliberate path before you're going to initiate any blocking. So on the left, we start with some pre-work, and Blue Triangle allows you to inventory and qualify all those domains and be able to approve those domains from a two-step process. Both somebody from a tag administrator point of view and a security administrator point of view can apply those things, and that creates a whitelist, and we will provide alerting and monitoring through the Blue Triangle portal, and that requires no code changes. So all that's done within the portal. We're going to collect all that data, have you be able to approve those domains, and then alert upon those without actually making any code changes. And then the second step would be generate and implement a CSP in monitor mode, so it's non-blocking. And then just like you would do with tuning a WAF, you want to look for and review those violations and then continue to look at, hey, are there any false negatives? Are there any false positives in there before you ever take the step to go to phase 3? We want you to be very comfortable before you ever go to a blocking mode that you've done all your homework correctly and you're not going to have any inadvertent blocking happening here or losing any functionality at all. And that's what that phase approach really gives you. So I thought it made sense and to just sort of go backwards just a tiny bit here, because everyone knows what synthetic monitoring and real user monitoring is, but I think it's important to distinguish those as it relates to a CSP, as it relates to domain activity in your site. We sort of stitch together both the perspectives of synthetics and real user monitoring to give you that full inventory and insight into what domains are hitting your site. But it's important to know the differences so that, in synthetic monitoring, it's actually being simulated from a browser from one of our agent locations, and it's a quote clean environment. There are no plugins to this browser. There are no potential malware on this browser. This is a perfectly controlled and clean environment. So if the Blue Triangle system sees a domain via the synthetic monitoring, it is absolutely being delivered by your site directly. Contrarily, if something is seen from a RUM standpoint, it may or may not be on your site directly. So let's talk about why. Well, a RUM tag or a JavaScript tag is added to each and every one of your pages, and it is looking at real user activity, but that is affected. That is affected by that end user's browser, whether what kind of extensions they have, if there's any infections going on in the browser, possible malware, ad injections. There's a ton of different things that can happen, as you know, in the wild with browsers. So the data that we see from a domain perspective from RUM is slightly different than what we see and how we qualify from a synthetic standpoint. And I want to make sure that we covered that going up front here. So here's sort of the tie-in right away, why that matters, the differentiation between RUM and synthetic. So in our approval process, and we'll go show this pretty quickly on live on our portal, we give you a lot of context and visibility into these domains. So the first piece we'll talk about in the far left column is the percent of BTT index. And what that really means is Blue Triangle, if you go onto bluetriangle.com, indexes a plethora of industry sites. And we do this to provide key performance metrics across industries. And what we're saying is that specific domain that's listed on that row is seen out of those 6,000 sites that we synthetically test every day, is seen in 5.5% of the time. It just gives you a little bit of context about the validity of that domain. Second piece ties into that previous slide we just talked about, which is this specific domain seen on my site via RUM, synthetic, or both? Again, anything that's seen from a synthetic standpoint is coming from that clean browser and is definitively on your code. Something that is seen both from a RUM and synthetic standpoint, same thing, it's coming from your code. When it's only RUM, there's some discussion about whether or not that's a valid domain that you have to worry about, because it could be affected by adware or extensions that are happening. So, and then the far right was we give you the opportunity where CSPs by source type can define how we're going to control this domain. So you can individually say there's going to be a specific domain that's going to be allowed to execute JavaScript, but maybe not CSS's images and fonts. And because the CSP gives you that granularity, we're going to give you that approval granularity as well. It'll make more sense as we review one live here in a few moments. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to switch to the portal view. Let me open that up now. So we're in the Blue Triangle portal. In the far left is the menu button. And we're going to focus today on services and CSP management. There are 2 menu items under there. In the event that you do not have menu items, or it says, please see support, it just means they're not either enabled under your contract yet, but we can also give access to this on a trial basis so you can see how easy it is for yourself to set these up. So if you don't have already access, please contact us to do so. Let's start in the overview page. So we're going to focus today on the account called Blue Triangle 2, which is actually bluetriangle.com. I have this set up here as this 3-step process for getting to implement a CSP, a whitelist, and first step is the data collection piece. So because we have both a RUM tag on bluetriangle.com and we're testing it from our clean environments synthetically, we've categorized 40 unique services that are on the bluetriangle.com website, both from a first and third party perspective. So we're going to skip this step 2 because this is about building an effective whitelist and CSP, knowing that step 1 has already been completed just for the fact that we have a RUM tag and synthetic test being set up. So like we showed in PowerPoint, if we go to the to be approved list here, for demo purposes, I already had a few of these domains already pre-approved, but we're going to select a few more, create and save that whitelist, and then go off and build a new CSP based upon this new whitelist. So this is all searchable and sortable. I'm going to look up a couple of domains that I know are something that I want to go improve. Facebook, I've already checked with our marketing staff, is a valid and known domain. It's supposed to be there. It's a service that we're engaged with and getting value from. So I've now actively searched on this domain list, and it's refined it down to Facebook and Facebook.net. Again, I already know that these are good domains, and I'm going to give approvals to them. I do want to make a note, while I'm able right now to make an approval both for a security admin perspective and a tag management admin perspective, typically customers like to have these separated into two different roles, and you can do so. For demo purposes here, they allowed me to combine the access to be able to approve both of these from both perspectives, but normally you're only going to have one per role or per login set up correctly. And then I'm going to save those changes based on those approvals, and you'll see those additional domains popping up. Now, here's where we've seen the context that we talked a little bit about just in the PowerPoint, which are the initial or the additional context and data that we're giving you to understand if this is a good domain or not. That percentage of BTT index, Facebook is on a plethora of the 6,000 sites that we index and scrape every day. That's no surprise to anyone. And they're observed both from a RUM and a synthetic perspective on our site. If we wanted to go look at something like Google, same thing here. I want to approve Google.com and Google Static are both services that are on my site and both seen from a synthetic and a RUM perspective and have a high occurrence on the index. And I'm going to save those additional ones in there too. And now I have all of those domains right now saved. I'm going to close this and refresh my screen here so it shows you that I now have 8 domains that are approved. Excellent. So we now have a working whitelist viewing within the Blue Triangle portal. Now, the rest of the part of this overview screen, if I scroll down a little bit, will tell me kind of real quickly what's going on in my site. I can find out if there are CSP violations. I can find out if there are whitelist violations. This is just a quick and easy way to see, is there something significant going on my site that I should be worried about from a violation standpoint? The reason why CSP violations are showing up right now for bluetriangle.com is because we actually have a CSP deployed on our site today. Despite that I'm using this for demo purposes, we actually take our own medicine. We take our own prescription here, and we have deployed a CSP in our site in order to protect it effectively. So some of those errors and violations are going to be listed here. And then based upon the whitelist that we've just created, we'll do that here as well. So the next step is to take that whitelist and go generate a CSP. I just want to show how quickly that can be done here. So if I click on generate CSP, it's going to give me some quick information about the status of all my domains as it relates to reviewing so far. I have approved only 5.5% of them. There's another 94.5%, and it gives me the actual number of domains that are ready to go. If I wanted to, I can do more domain approvals from this screen as well to make it easy and search on those things. But again, for just demo purposes, I'm not going to complete and go through all the approvals of all the different domains. I just wanted to be able to show, based upon this new domain list, let's go create a CSP. So I scroll down here and it shows me 3 CSPs I've already created in preparation of this demo here today. And I'm going to create a new one here. So the first thing I'm going to do is see down here are the approved domains, and these are the not used in the CSP and used in the CSP. So I see these are all the domains that I had either previously to this call approved, or the Facebook and the Google ones that we just added. I'm going to move those over, and now they're going to be in the prospective CSP. There's one quick thing I'm going to do here too, is right now I've got it set for block mode, and following that idea that we're going to do this in a phased approach, we're going to set this to monitor mode right now. It's called report only mode. So you can see how this active switch changes the actual CSP response header A CSP with nothing set behind it is actually in block mode, as indicated by the switch here. And if I turn that off, and it actually changes the actual CSP to be a report-only CSP. So we're not going to go into block mode until we're confident that we've done everything correctly and don't have any miscues in terms of understanding what domains are across our site. And then the second piece is I'm going to name this here. We'll call those B here today. So I've got my response header here. I've got my domains already approved, and I'm going to create a new one. So now up in the top here, I've got a new one created called Demo CSPB. And if I want to go view that, I can see the two ways to be deploying. So we talked about real quickly in the beginning here, but how do you deploy the CSP? So here is a working CSP that can be added to a header. And here is a working CSP that can be cut and paste into your source code from a meta tag perspective. So either one of those are valid methods. We have customers using it in both ways. And you can either cut and paste this, or you can access this through our API. So all of our CSPs are active and able to be retrieved through our API. So in a workflow situation, let's just say you were using Jenkins to build your website. You can use our API within that framework to go request the latest CSP. Or you can cut and paste this. We have a number of customers that also use the response header when they have a CDN to inject that header via their favorite CDN. So that's another way too. We can always talk about the additional workflow capabilities there. But here is a working CSP based upon this domain list that we've already approved and based upon the options in which we set. They're all set on a default mode, and we'll have a more advanced discussion to talk about all of these different possibilities that we accommodate within the context of a CSP. But right now, we have a completed CSP. So one of the other pieces that I've always talked about along the way is the necessity to monitor and proactively look at these violations. So if you go up here to, I have a screen called Domain Violations and Audit Log. It can be found in the gear menu, and it's Domain Violations and Audit Log. And if I click on that, it's going to open up an interactive list of all the violations. And if you see here in the context, it's going to show you when did that violation occur, what type of violation was it a domain violation, or these are interactable, I can search on it if it was a CSP violation, what host, domain, and all the pages that are associated with that violation. And then if you recall, we talked about that perspective between RUM or synthetic. It'll show that as well. Were we observing this from a synthetic or a RUM perspective? And then everything we do is exportable. This is just one place where you can look for those violations, both from a domain whitelist and a CSP perspective. But there's a myriad of ways you could do that within the Blue Triangle portal. You can have those alerts set up to email to you regularly. It could be texted to you. We have integration with Slack and MS Teams and a number of other items, all ways in which, however you're used to ingesting alerts into some system so you can react properly to it and get them in real time. So if I head back in summary here, we've completed that goal. We've actually implemented an accurate and effective content security policy right here live on the demo. Albeit it needs some continued work. For demo purposes, I just wanted to reserve it for a few additional domains. But Blue Triangle, effectively, it just enables you to easily identify and inventory all those domains being communicated with on your site. We're able to be creative in way we create a domain list and then manage and deploy a CSP that works effectively and easily. And then, like we said, the last piece of that puzzle is being able to continuously monitor, log, and be notified of those violations as they occur in real time. So if there are any adjustments that need to be made, you can have that real-time notification. If you want more information about how to do this or want some help about how to set this up for your site today, even if it is in that phase 2 approach, which is just looking at things from a Blue Triangle domain whitelist violations, at least get an understanding and impact that maybe domains are having upon your site. Just reach out to your individual account managers if you know them, or email at sales@bluetriangletech or bluetriangle.com, and we'd be happy to help you. I think, Mark, we can switch to some questions now if there's any.
Thanks, Gus. Yes, we've had a few questions come in while you were going. You mentioned quickly that there were multiple ways to implement a CSP once it was complete to automate it. The question is, can you explain those methods further?
Sure, I probably could show that here. I think in my appendix here. Let me switch to that. See, it's down here. So in terms of deployment on ongoing deployment of a CSP, there are multiple ways to do that. We covered the fact that you could either do this via meta tag or the header. So from that perspective, you could do it either one of those, but actually deploying it, both those methods, you can use our API. So we have an API set up that you can draw the latest CSP from. There's a number of folks from a header perspective that will deploy that CSP via their CDN provider, whether it's Akamai, Fastly, Instar, Cloudflare. They can actually inject it through help support of them into the header, or you can manually do it to the server side for a header and as well as the meta tag. So there's a couple different ways to do that, and I think, and we can even provide you the full API documentation on how to draw that CSP out.
That's great, thanks. The next question is, we already have a CSP on our site. Is there anything that Blue Triangle can do to help with that?
Yeah, we've engaged with a few customers. Well, we don't necessarily advise that path. When we've brought on some customers that already had a CSP or some form of CSP on their site, one of the benefits that we can bring is those alerting and logging mechanisms that we talked about that are so important. So we can give that person or that company immediate insight into what CSP violations are or are not occurring. So we can give instant visibility and provide that feedback loop of where there might be some problematic pieces on their CSP. Often when we've done this, we've found a couple of domains that they didn't explicitly list in their CSP that were on their site and they were being blocked. So there is an opportunity for help your customer, even in that situation.
Very good. Okay. The next question is a specific scenario. So we have a third-party vendor, Criteo, that has been limited to 5 simultaneous piggyback tags, but those can be from a pool of possible providers. How would I accommodate that in a CSP?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we've had a couple of customers do that. One, I applaud you for limiting the piggyback or the additional tags that Criteo can fire. That's a great policy because limiting the number of tags is certainly going to support you from a performance perspective. But if they've got a pool of possible domains that can be accessed rather than just the existing 5, there's probably a couple ways to do that. Number one, reach out to Criteo and ask them who are those additional vendors that they might be piggybacking on and what domains would they be. And probably maybe the more prudent answer is, because we suggest you do this in a phased approach, if we're listening in a domain whitelist via, world first and up to phase 1, and we're not actually implementing a CSP, we're going to listen over maybe a week's period of time and find out all those domains that Criteo is allowing to be piggybacked on. And then incorporate those in the CSP so there isn't a problem. Probably kind of highlights the need for that phased approach, certainly.
Great. All right. The last question we have for you today is there a way in your CSP manager to accommodate only secure domains, so TLS, SSL?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you ask that question because that's where a number of people start initially on their CSP. They may not start with a full whitelist. They'll just start with the ability to say, hey, any domains that are across my site must be HTTPS. And if you require that, and you can lock that down via your CSP, you'll only then be communicating with SSL sites. And I'll show you real quickly how it's done. So if we go back to the CSP Security Policy Manager within our portal, If we scroll down here, these are some of the advanced options that we talked about. Right now, specifically, that's the second one, which is enable loading of resources over HTTP. So it said yes right now. What that means is this CSP is going to allow non-secure communications across those domains. If I click this radio button, it simply changes the CSP itself and basically adds HTTPS : What that means in syntax of the content security policy is that only domains of that secure nature that you're looking for will be communicated upon, which is a great policy to do so. Absolutely.
That's perfect. Okay. That is all the time we have today, everyone. If we didn't get to your question or you would like to discuss implementing a CSP further, you can email us at support@bluetriangle.com. Thanks for joining us this week, and we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.